Hello everyone, my name is Moronto Umeakiwoga and I'm an Executive Research Officer for the ThinkCyber Nigeria Kaizen program. The Kaizen program is a hands-on learning series which is designed to bridge the gap between learning and cybersecurity practice. In this video, we'll be covering Aragog, Fox, and Brainpan 1. Aragog and Fox are part of the Harry Potter machine series, while Brainpan 1 and Fox are focused on buffer overflow exploits. This gives us a unique chance to explore web challenges as well as dive into buffer overflow techniques, moving from enumeration to exploitation and then to privilege escalation. Welcome to the Kaizen series and let's get started.
By the way, if you're looking to level up your career, ThinkCyber Nigeria's next cybersecurity training kicks off on the 12th of January 2026. This advanced program offers real-world labs and simulations, organization tracks in pension testing, stock operations, and digital forensics, a pathway to Tier 2 professional readiness. However, late registration are still on till the 15th of September 2025 for the August 25th session that just kicked off. Whether you're a student, graduate, or tech-driven professional, this is your opportunity to stand out in the global cybersecurity job market. Applications are now open. Join the next elite cohort. Let's dive in.
Moving on to the Fox machine. This was a machine which was focused on exploit development, that's in buffer overflow, and the objective was to explore the vulnerable Hogwarts binary on port 9898, gain shell access as Harry, and escalate privileges to root. I started with host discovery, enumeration, and scanning. I utilized NetDiscover to locate live hosts and I identified the IP address of the Fox machine. Then I did a comprehensive Nmap scan on the IP address I found and I detected 5 open ports, which were port 21, port 22, port 80, port 2222, port 9898. And from this scan, I saw that there was anonymous FTP login allowed. This was discovered because I used the -SC flag with the Nmap, which uses Nmap's default script to scan the IP address.
To perform further enumeration, we use the Nmap to perform a directory brute force on the target web server to see if there are any hidden subdomains, and the output here only shows us that we have the index table. And to continue with our enumeration, we ensure to connect remotely to the ports, which we connected to the port 989 using Netcat, and here you can see NC, the target IP address, and the open port 99. And upon connection, we're welcomed with this terminal, which is asking us to pick out of this list of commands. So first thing I tried here was to try command rejection, and you can see here that command rejection does not work. So we went ahead to also connect remotely to the FTP ports, which allowed for anonymous access, as we saw earlier from the result of the Nmap scan. So with this, we're able to log in with the username anonymous, and they didn't require a password. And we realized we have just the read-only permission, which means we can't edit files on here or create new files. And here you can see here the directory listing showed us that we have just a file called server_reports, and here are the permissions. So to allow for further enumeration, we went ahead to download this file onto the attacker's terminal. We use the get command to be able to get this particular file onto the attacker's terminal, which is my terminal. For further enumeration on the file which we downloaded, use strings, and here I'll be explaining the process of how we exploited the buffer overflow vulnerability to get the reverse shell. To begin this, we started with the fuzzing, which allows you to get the exact breaking point, which means the point at which the program crashes. So what we did here was to send a payload containing A's in an increasing range. So here we went from 100 to 2001, and it increased by multiples of 100, whereby it goes from 100, 200, and the stopping point is 2001. So it's going to do this multiple times until it crashes. And here we can see it sends the first 100 bytes, which is simply 100 A's. It did not crash. But upon sending 200 bytes, which is 200 A's, the service crashed at 200 bytes. So now that we found the breaking point, the next thing is to find the exact offset at which the program crashed. So the program crashed at the 200 bytes. It doesn't mean it's the exact offset. This just means we were able to overwrite past the buffer, which is why it crashed. So here now we want to know the exact offset, which is also the exact size of the input. So to do this, we went ahead to use the GTB debugger and Metasploit tools to get this done. So here we can see we use the pattern underscore create.rb2, which can be found in the Metasploit framework tools, to get a pattern of 300 bytes. And upon doing this, we went ahead to, so here what can be seen here is you echo 0 to this particular address, which comes up the ASR, which is the address randomization. And upon sending this, you can come back to our GTB terminal, press the info register command. You can see that, and upon inputting this, we can see our EIP address is now 0x424242. So 4242 is the X value of B. And here we can see we have 4, which is also the same as the 4 Bs we have here. So now we can see that we have been able to overwrite the EIP address to our line here. Using this particular command, we can be able to check for the bad characters, and we can see here there are no bad characters except for the X00, which is also the return character, and that is normally always a bad character as it's just a new line character. So the next thing to do is to find the JMP which is the jump execution address, and to do this we use the grouper tool, and these are the necessary parameters you have to give it for it to run properly. So here it can be seen our payload was created using MSF which is our shell code, and we can see the payload is the shell reverse TCP. The L host is the attacker's local IP address, and the L port is the attacker's port, the port in which it wants to get the reverse connection. And the -F, which is format, is Python. The -B simply stands for the bad character, simply the characters we do not want to be included in our payload. And in this case, we don't want the X00, which is the new line character in our payload. So here is the result. Now that we've gotten this, we can go ahead and create the full payload, which we will be sending to the open ports to use this buffer flow exploit to gain a reverse shell connection. And here you can see this is the shell code which we created using MSF Venom. The offset is 112 bytes of A, and this is the EIP address. You can see why the EIP address is now the jump execution address, which is the JMP and the loop is simply means no operation. So here we can see the payload now is now the offset. There was the EIP, which is also the jump execution address. There was the no piece length, that's the no operation. There was the buff, which the buff is the shell code. Now, once you are able to send this, after creating a listener, you will get a reverse shell back. So before we went ahead to send this, we created a listener using Metasploit. And it can be seen here, you set the necessary options, which is the local port in which you want to get the connection back, the exact payload used, and you run. So once you run, the listener starts to listen. So you can come back here and send the payload. So the whole process of sending the payload was automated in Python, and this can be seen here. So upon running the code, we're able to catch a shell as a limited user, and the limited user is Ari, which can be seen here.
So after gaining a shell as user Ari, I ran sudo -i and immediately landed me a shell as root. So after exploiting the machine, I identified vulnerabilities that align with critical categories outlined in the OWASP top 10. The first one was the security misconfiguration, which was the FTP anonymous login. The FTP server allowed anonymous access without a password, and it exposed the server August binary directly. Then, using components with known vulnerabilities, that's A9, the server Hogwarts binary was susceptible to a buffer overflow, and it's a well-documented class of vulnerability in custom software. Then, the injection. The buffer overflow itself is a form of injection, and crafted input was used to overwrite memory, which led to arbitrary code execution. Then, for the remediation plan, to secure the Fox machine and prevent similar compromises, the following remediation steps are recommended. For FTP hardening, disable anonymous login. If anonymous access is essential, restrict it to a th-rooted environment with minimal permissions, and limit FTP access to specific IP ranges or authenticated users. Then, secure custom services. Implement robust input validation for all user-supplied data to prevent buffer overflows and other injection attacks. Compile binaries with modern stack protections. And for SSH best practices, run SSH on a non-standard port and disable password authentication in favor of key-based authentication.
Here is a brief walkthrough of the process, which is not a true structure. It goes on discovery to the enumeration to the photo and finally the privilege escalation phase.
Now, this is the mind map for the Fox machine. This mind map shows the stages of exploitations of the Fox machine from reconnaissance to exploitation, foothold, and privilege escalation. So we started from reconnaissance, where we use NetDiscover to identify the target IP address. Then enumeration, we also found open ports, 5 open ports, 21, 22, 80, 2222, and 9898. And on enumeration, we discovered that FTP anonymous login was allowed, so we used that and retrieved the binary server_Hogwarts. Then we ran it locally and we landed on a magic spell prompt, which was the site for the buffer overflow vulnerability. Then we crafted a buffer flow exploit and injected shellcode to connect back, and then exploited the Hogwarts service on port 9898. Then we gained reverse shell as user Harry, and from user Harry, we were able to escalate privileges using sudo-i to root. Now, this is the weekly activity report for the Fox machine, and it details the tools used, the approaches, the uniqueness of the technique for each phase. So for the discovery phase, where we use NetDiscover and Nmap to identify the target IP and the open ports, the uniqueness of this technique, there was no unusual discovery technique, and it was the standard reconnaissance methodology. Then for the enumeration phase, the services identified were the FTP, SSH, HTTP, and the custom Hogwarts service. And the uniqueness of this technique was that the Hogwarts binary itself was the key to the challenge, and enumeration reviewed it as the main attack surface rather than the web or FTP directly. So for a foothold, the exploit or method used was buffer overflow in the server_Hogwarts service running on port 9898. And the uniqueness of this technique was that manual buffer overflow exploitation was used rather than relying on pre-built exploits. And this demonstrated the understanding of offset calculation, AIP override, and shellcode injection. For privilege escalation, the method used was pseudo privileges escalation from Harry to root. And the uniqueness of this technique was that it was a straightforward misconfiguration. So the focus of this machine was the buffer overflow exploit rather than the complexity of the privilege escalation.
By the way, if you're looking to level up your cybersecurity career, ThinkCyber Nigeria has got you covered. The next cyber simulator training kicks off on August 25th of 2025.